My understanding from what little I knew behind the scenes was this rift between Rogan and Trump was actually real. The inside story of Harris's lost gamble on Joe Rogan, Beyonce, and a late Texas rally. Oh, I heard that they were trying to schedule Rogan, but Rogan kept basically like kind of dodging. Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't performing well in softball interviews as her sugar high faded in September and early October. But if she wanted to expand her support, and she needed to, she would have to expose herself to tough questioning. That was particularly important with men, specifically young men. That's us guys, who were not buying what she was selling. The obvious answer, Joe Rogan, a late 1990s sitcom star turned bro with a brain podcaster. Rogan boasted a subscriber base that amounted to a total eclipse of the genre's universe, with nearly 15 million signed up just on Spotify. Wait, what was the sitcom that Rogan was on? What? News radio? Everyone's saying news radio. That was a TV show? Never heard of it. His 2018 interview with Elon Musk, during which the Tesla and SpaceX founder smoked pot and sipped whiskey, garnered tens of millions of views on YouTube and crashed the next generation car company's stock. Wasn't that for like a day? The vast majority of Rogan's guests and listeners were white men, presenting Harris with a potentially golden opportunity to prove her mettle by walking into the lion's den. On October 11th, Harris deputy campaign manager Rob Flaherty, the aide in charge of digital strategy, made the first Zoom call to start negotiating with Rogan's reps. He did not know what to expect. These might be juiced up UFC-looking supplement people, he thought. He was surprised, perhaps a tad disappointed, to find out that Rogan's associates were more like Hollywood agents. And what does he think? What kind of fucking, what does that mean? What? So I called Martha Stewart's agents, and I was wondering if they would all be like old gentle lady, housekeepers, but I was surprised to find that they were actually real agents that worked in the industry. Like, whatever. In that vein, they outlined the podcaster's conditions for an interview: no staff in the studio, no topic restrictions, and Harris would have to sign a waiver. What kind of waiver? Some waivers are pretty common. Usually when you go on shows, you'll sign a release allowing them to use the footage for their channel and everything else, obviously, or for promotional material, which makes sense. There was one more item in the small print. Harris would have to come to Austin, Texas. Rogan's reps said that might be negotiable, but he had only once done an interview with an out-of-studio guest. That was leaker Edward Snowden, who was wanted in the United States at the time. So ordinarily, I would say, wow, Cozy Bedar, thanks for the 309 viewer host on Kick. Normally, I would say it's crazy that you would demand the vice president of the United States to fly to you in order to do an interview. However, Rogan is like so fucking big that maybe he could get away with it because he's like so huge. I don't know, maybe, but he's like, he's a big guy. There was one more item in the small print. Okay, yeah. Along with fellow Harris campaign advisors Stephanie Cutter and Brian Fallon, Flaherty offered up that Harris would be happy to talk about social media censorship, weed, and other issues they thought would be of most interest to his listeners. From their perspective, it was a suggestion of possible topics, not an exhaustive or exclusive list. That's not what Rogan wanted to talk about. Joe wants to talk about the economy, the border, and abortion, one of his reps said, according to a person familiar with the negotiations. Oh, God. Talking about the economy and the border with Joe Rogan? I would have loved to have seen that. After 2 Zoom sessions, Flaherty called the Rogan intermediaries with an offer. Could Rogan join Harris in Michigan? He asked, proposing a date later in the week. No go, the Rogan team said after reaching the host on a week-long hunting trip. Austin or nothing. On a week-long hunting trip. That's going to be tough, Flaherty said. We're only a few weeks out from the election. Harris had less than zero reason to be in Texas. It was not a swing state. Her campaign was flush with cash, so it made no sense to take her off the trail to raise money. She was in a battleground or bust mode, plus a detour to Texas might smell like desperation to the press and a waste of money to donors. Harris campaign chief Jennifer O'Malley Dillon broke the impasse. Harris would be in Atlanta on October 24th with Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. O'Malley Dillon said the campaign could fly her to Houston for a rally under the cover of visiting a state with one of the nation's most restrictive abortion laws to put her in proximity to Austin. She dispatched an advanced team to the Texas state capitol to do a walkthrough of Rogan's studio and get ready for a Harris arrival. She authorized a negotiating team to give Rogan what he demanded, an in-studio interview in Austin on October 25th. For all of former President Donald Trump's work to reach apolitical voters through podcasts, YouTube, and other outlets, Harris positioned herself to score a coup by grabbing the biggest megaphone of them all. If she did, she would be exploiting a rift between Rogan and Trump. Somebody said that's debatable. She'll reach more swing voters through Rogan. So I'm going to give you, so there's that argument, and then I'll give you a counter argument. And then I thought of like a counter argument, and I actually don't know what the answer is. So somebody would say, well, if you go talk to Rogan, he's got voters in all states, so it makes sense to talk to him there, right? So that's the argument. The counter argument might be Rogan's listeners tend to skew younger, even though he does have older listeners as well, but they tend to skew younger and they're less likely to vote. So even though it looks like Rogan has a huge thumbprint online, he might not necessarily be reaching those swing state voters in the same way that going to that swing state and doing rallies or whatever might. However, one thing that I've thought about more, as like a counter argument to that, is that you might be able to, when I consider like media impact, what I think of is like when you do a show, who watches that show and how far does it go? But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot more over the past couple of months is the, like, would you call it the ricochet effect or the resonance effect? I don't know. Like one person does a thing and then other people start to resonate with it. That if you go on Rogan and you do that show, maybe there are not a ton of people that watch that are in your prime voting demographic. However, there might be a lot of people that cover clips on the Joe Rogan show that are squarely in that demographic. So say you go to Rogan's show and the audience tends younger and you do decently there. And maybe you're like, okay, what if I would have talked to somebody who had been more relevant to this demographic? People in those demographics, those media people might cover that show. And then that might be important, yeah. I don't even know if Rogan's audience skews younger that much. It'd be interesting to see. Rogan's audience definitely skews younger compared to mainstream media sources. When I say younger, though, I'm talking about the overall media landscape. I don't mean younger as in they're like 25 and younger. I mean younger in that like the majority of them, my guess is are like under the age of 40. And like 40 plus, especially 50 plus are your big voting demographics. So I don't mean that like all of his listeners are like 21, 22. And also I'm sure that there's like a sizable chunk of his viewers that are over the age of 40. Like if I had to bullshit a number like out of nowhere, am I going to be completely totally wrong? Nowadays, as big as Rogan is, my guess would be that easily less than half of his viewers, I would guess less than half his viewers are over the age of 40 would be my guess. But not that much not that much lower would be my guess. Who's listening to the Joe Rogan Experience? Hold on. Jesus. My voice will be back to normal someday. Oh, geez. Okay. So, okay. So it's actually more heavily younger than I would have expected. So 56% of his viewership is 34 and lower. 44% is 35 and higher. So 40 plus, probably below 40%. Maybe that's about where I expected to be. 37% aged here. Just 7% are over 55. Damn. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not saying, let me just be clear. I'm not saying that this is a waste of time completely. I'm just saying that those older audiences vote so much more, I think. Well, can we find out how often do demographics vote by age? This is a British men, N equals 369. Oh shit, I didn't even see that. Whoops. Well, that might have skewed heavily off in one direction then. Number of voters? Is this just registered voters or? Jesus Christ. I don't think this tells you who's actually voting, but whatever. Okay. Were you ever close to appearing on the Joe Rogan Experience? I've always had a bunch of mutuals, but I don't know how close I was ever to getting on there. When were you dying? I've just had a pretty bad flu the past few days. Yesterday, I actually woke up. Oof. I was like, it was one of those things where I haven't had a headache like this in a long time. Where you go to like rub your eyes and it's like, it hurts behind your eyes. Not good. Let's see. Harris positioned herself to score a coup by grabbing the biggest megaphone of them all. If she did, she would be exploiting a rift between Rogan and Trump. My understanding from what little I knew behind the scenes was this rift between Rogan and Trump was actually real, that Rogan, at least up through 2022, Rogan did not want to interview Trump, which I was surprised when I learned about. I was like, wait, really? He really did not want to learn, or he didn't want to interview Trump. Rogan had called Trump a man baby and a threat to democracy in 2022, vowing not to interview the former president. At the time, the beef was just one more sign of the social stigma attached to Trump after the January 6th assault on the Capitol, said one longtime Trump advisor. But when Rogan appeared to endorse independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in August, Trump fired back on the Truth social media platform. It will be interesting to see how loudly Joe Rogan gets booed the next time he enters the UFC ring. Question mark. MAGA 2024, Trump wrote. Nice, bullying. I'm going to be honest. Yesterday when I was, the past few days I've been like, because I had to take everything out of this room to roll my carpet out and then do all the soundproofing or whatever. I listened through a lot of RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing. It feels really bad to say this, but I feel like he did decently well. I didn't hear any. There might have been like one or two maybe yikes moments, but for the most part, I feel like he actually did pretty fine. I don't know if anybody else listened to this or disagreed or whatever, but yeah. He was full of shit when he tried to attack Bernie. What did he try to attack Bernie on? I'm trying to remember. I watched him on the Bernie one. Is this just because you had low expectations? The only one who came off poorly was Tulsi. Oh, I haven't watched hers at all. Oh, on taking pharma donations? Oh, I don't even remember that, maybe. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, because RFK said you guys all take donos from pharma. One thing, careful for what I'm saying here. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm fairly sure on this. One thing you have to be really careful of is when people say pharma donated this much money to a candidate, when you look at the overall donations from a company to a person, depending on the data you're looking at, that could just be all the people that donated that worked at that place. It doesn't mean that the company that itself is actually donating. I've seen people make that mistake a few times where people will say like, oh, look, like Twitter donated $20 million to Kamala Harris. But then when you click through to the links, you go to either Open Secrets or wherever, and you look at the donations, it's actually, these are just personal individual donations to people that work at the company. That's different than the company itself donating the money, but...
And you had those conversations with Alex Jones. Wouldn't you be able to have the same kind of conversation with Donald Trump?
That's the problem.
No, it's not the problem. You revealed that Alex Jones is a human being. Yeah. He's fucked up. He has demons in his head. He's obviously chaotic all over the place, but there's some wisdom to the perspective he takes on the world. Even if though he is often full of shit, he's able to predict certain things that very few people are willing to bring up. So isn't Trump the same way? A person, egomaniac, whatever personality things you can talk about, isn't it worthwhile to lay it out? Like, who's going to, if you listen to interviews of Trump, who has the balls to call him out on his bullshit?
Chris Wallace did.
No, calling out somebody on their bullshit is easy when you're just being adversarial. But as a person who is genuinely, empathetically trying to understand,
yeah,
I think you're really good at that. Like, you pulled him in.
I don't know if he would genuinely be there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I think he would be putting on a performance. And that's...
You don't think you can break through that in like 30 minutes?
I mentioned this, like, don't go where the puck is, go where the puck will be. Man, I noticed this hurts so much. There's a lot of people who, when Trump lost in 2020 and they thought that Trump was going to be gone forever, they came out and they were honest about their feelings about Trump. And then when they saw that Trump was winning again, they completely 180'd on it. Oof, that hurts. We saw this with a lot of the Ben Shapiro stuff.
What we saw yesterday is inexcusable, unjustifiable, awful on every level, disgusting on every level. When you have rioters taking over the U.S. Capitol building, the seat of American democracy, and when you have those rioters saying that they are doing so in the name of the President of the United States, and when you have them doing that to the legislative branch of the government, and when you have those people, they are rioters, they are not protesters, okay? As soon as you commit an act of vandalism or violence, you are no longer in the category of protester, you are now a rioter. And this was an attempted act of insurrection. I mean, technically speaking, that's what it was, considering that the reason that this happened is because Congress was simply there doing their constitutional duty and tabulating the state-certified electoral count. That's as bad an event as I have ever seen in American public life. Frankly, I think that in many ways, it's the worst thing to happen to the United States of America since 9/11. It's It was cataclysmically awful.
You see it here a little bit with Joe Rogan, because I think even here, I don't know if people were 100% sure, because this is middle of 2022. A lot of people are like, yeah, Trump is a crazy guy, a loser, strongman, whatever. And then as soon as it started to change, the wind currents started to blow a bit differently. Their chimes started singing a different tune. Pretty cringe.
Minutes.
I'd need more time than that. And he doesn't do any drugs. That's the thing about Alex. You can get Alex high, get him drunk, and he'll start talking about interdimensional child molesters.
Yeah.
And then you get the real Alex.
Oh, maybe you have somebody else on as well to introduce chaos, like Alex.
No.
They have to be
I would have to be just me and him. That would be a focused thing. I would have to really take time with Trump. But also, I'm not well versed enough politically to know all of the corruption that's been alleged and to understand what the whole Russiagate stuff, what's real, like how much of it's clear that there is more than one organization that's involved in communicating with Russia before the 2016 election. So it's pretty clear that the Clinton administration was involved. It's pretty clear that
see, like this sounds like a surprising amount of self-awareness, right? Like, I don't have the political background to know what's true or not true about this stuff. Like, obviously, there are multiple communications happening between multiple organizations in Russia. Like, I'm just not sure,
The Trump administration had some communication with some people in Russia.
See, like, oh my God, he even knows this much here. But now he just calls it Russiagate, the pure hoax. That is true, what he just said. Roger Stone was in direct communication with people working in Moscow. Yes.
Pretty clear that Hunter Biden had some very suspicious dealings in Ukraine. And
the Hunter Biden suspicious stuff, now, that was being reported on at the time. Now we know, though, that the informant that made those allegations made them all up, completely fabricated them. But
there's a lot going on there, man. And it's hard for anybody to parse. It's really hard for anybody, and especially to have an objective assessment of exactly what's going on. And then to be able to do that and broadcast it publicly. That's quite a project. And I think if you really want to do that correctly, it's something that I would have to research for a long time. And to really, and I don't have that kind of time.
Not for certain people that you're really curious about. Like, you have that kind of time for Bob Lazar.
Yes.
But maybe not for Donald Trump.
No, that's different. Because Bob Lazar,
Yeah, I don't know, man. At the same time, Rogan was hardly Mr. Popular inside Harris's camp. Her brother-in-law, Tony West, longtime advisor. Well, hold on, just as a quick thing, though. This stuff, though, Rogan was completely on the Trump wagon by the time Harris was even nominated or swapped out with Biden, so... What reporter made up the Hunter stuff? Not a reporter. The original FBI informant had fabricated everything about Hunter, Biden, and Burisma. He just made it up. But what are you going to do? No one cares, though. At the same time, Rogan was hardly Mr. Popular inside Harris's camp. Her brother-in-law, Tony West, longtime advisor Minion Moore, and others argued against putting Harris on the podcast, especially after her first venture into politically tough terrain. An interview with Fox's Brett Baer in the middle of the Rogan negotiations bombed. There was no telling what Rogan might ask her or how he would treat her. Plus, his anti-woke crusade had made him a pariah on the hard left. They were overruled by O'Malley Dillon's crew, but not because the concerns were considered invalid. Even for those of us who were in favor of it, it was a close call, said one of the Harris advisors involved in the back and forth. The Harris High Command was not built to lob Hail Mary passes. Its leaders, starting with O'Malley Dillon, cut their teeth on campaigns that ridiculed fellow Democrats for bedwetting, whether crises were imagined or real. Seeking an interview on a popular podcast hardly qualified as a desperation throw downfield. But it was a relatively risky move for a campaign leadership that had kept its candidate hermetically sealed in the manufacturer's box, like she would retain more value without exposure to air and sunlight. On October 10th, the day before Flaherty first spoke, it is Flaherty, right? Flaherty first spoke with Rogan's team. The Harris campaign's weekly internal analytics assessment of the race, 129-page document, had projected Harris winning exactly 270 electoral votes. She was on track to take the blue wall and Nebraska's 2nd district, but lose the rest of the swing states, at least according to her own analysts. Beneath the top-line numbers, though, the analytics showed why it was so important for Harris to reach the type of voters who listened to Rogan. In battleground states, Trump led Harris by 10.6 percentage points among men and trailed her by 9.3 percentage points among women. According to her team's figures, in both gender splits, Trump did about 2 points better against Harris. The battlegrounds, the areas of greatest concentration for the campaigns than in national polling. He led her among young men, was tied with Hispanic men, and trailed her among black men by a smaller margin than Biden beat him by in 2020. For many Democratic operatives outside the campaign, the October 22nd announcement that Harris would hold a Houston rally felt like a palm-to-face moment. She was going to lose Texas by a lot, and a visit would not force Trump to spend his limited campaign money there. Her aides scheduled the rally for a Friday night in the fall, October 25th, in Texas. It was as if no one on her team knew that the night reserved for high school football was more sacred than Easter in the state. Campaign advisor David Plouffe responded to the criticism publicly, explaining that Harris wanted to shine a spotlight on a place where she believed Trump's anti-abortion policies had done the most damage to women's health. Only a few people knew the real reason. The whole Houston rally was built to put her in proximity to Rogan. The ongoing negotiations on that were touch and go. So I can say for, as somebody who's traveled a bunch, the reason why traveling so far sucks is that you can lose an entire day's worth of activities if you make a huge flight. DC to Austin is, my guess is going to be, that's probably what, like a 4.5 hour flight. DCA to Houston. You probably fly through DFW. And then from DFW to... Could you get no, you could get a direct flight from DCA to Houston, I think. Okay, 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 40 minutes. But like, it's pronounced Flaherty. But 3 hour, 40 minute flight. If the flight leaves, let's assume the flight leaves at noon, you're probably on private planes. I actually don't know anything about flying private. My guess is you still probably need to be to the airport an hour early because you still have to go through security and everything. That'd be my guess. Although maybe not actually. I don't know for Secret Service and everything. Maybe you can expedite that or maybe it would take longer. But if you assume an hour before, that means that you're at the airport at 11. You're flying at noon. You land at 3:40, maybe a little earlier, private, maybe faster. Then you're out of the airport by 4:30. So you've like deleted a whole chunk of your day there. And that could have been like another rally. It could have been a meeting with important people. It could, like, there's a lot of stuff you could be doing. Wasting time on flights just sucks. So this is why they're trying to get like a close place to like, okay, we can fly there, do a rally, then do Rogan's show. But like spending a whole day flying somewhere, doing a show, and then flying back is like so, it's just so much wasted time, especially with so many limited days to campaign. Yeah, I would think private would be a lot more easy. I don't know. I could see, like, for reasons like being easy, I could see it being easier for certain reasons, and I could see it being harder for certain reasons. I just don't know. Yeah. I have no clue. Flaherty had called his Rogan contacts on October 18th before the rally was set. We could do Friday the 25th. Flaherty said, "Wish we had known about this sooner because he has the 25th blocked out as a personal day," one of Rogan's reps said. That's wild to me. However, Rogan, he's probably the biggest podcaster in the world. So, I mean, like, maybe he could, big dick like this. Somebody said private skips security. Is that true? I feel like unless they have a whole different airport, because you wouldn't want people to like smuggle firearms through security going private and then bring them into the main airport or something, right? But maybe it's a different section of the airport that's not connected to the main one at all. I have no idea. Maybe, I don't know. What about Saturday morning? Flaherty countered. Only if it's before 8:30 a.m. came the tough reply. Before 8:30? Like they've got to be done? Like it's got to be wrapped before 8:30? Or they have to start at 8? Jesus. The tone is different, Flaherty thought. Vice President of the United States is offering to come on your fucking show and you keep putting up more hoops. Harris's team still wanted to make it work, but a new wariness set in. On October 22nd, the same day the Harris camp announced the rally, the AP reported that Trump would be Rogan's guest on Friday, the personal day that Rogan had originally reserved. Nice. Mutual friends Elon Musk and Dana White had convinced Trump and Rogan to bury their dispute. According to a Trump aide, there would be no Harris interview. Ah, the Elon Connect. Elon is friends with so many of these motherfuckers, dude. This wild hand of Texas Hold'em, Harris aides thought that they had one more ace to play. Beyonce was in Houston and willing to perform at the rally. The plan changed like 20 times that day, and they landed on her singing Freedom a cappella before Harris walked on stage, said one person familiar with the back and forth between the campaign and Beyonce's team. As consolation prizes go, Beyonce's performance ranked pretty high. It shouldn't. She was a bigger star than Rogan, no one cares, a bona fide global diva, not political, and Freedom was the campaign's theme song, no one cares. But Beyonce would not give Harris the potential benefits of a Rogan interview, demonstration of her willingness to go outside her comfort zone and connection to a new audience. Worse for Harris, Beyonce didn't perform. Okay. She would speak, but she would not sing. No Rogan, no freedom. The campaign kept its poker face, but it had played out a losing hand. Trump spent 3 hours with Rogan in an interview that instantly went viral. The contrast amounted to a traumatic event, said one Harris aide that I will never forget, but it wasn't quite over. Rogan would later blame the missed connection on Harris and accuse her of refusing to talk about marijuana, even though her platform included legalization. Harris aides made a final stab, offering to let Rogan talk with the vice president in Washington, D.C. the day after a closing argument speech at the foot of the White House. Rogan's team balked, citing the Austin-only condition. Flaherty had seen enough. You get one trip to Texas within 3 weeks of the election, he told Rogan's associates. You don't get two. Damn. Jesus. Yeah, where the fuck was the Soros funding on this? Why do you say that RFK did well when he didn't back down on his vaccine skepticism? He lied about following the evidence. When the only evidence is they don't cause things like autism, he's either totally incompetent to not have studied it. I feel like when you, I'm sorry, let me be more particular. When I say he did well, what I mean, I don't mean that like he impressed me as a person with high knowledge and all that. What I just mean is like rhetorically, it seemed like he did fine. When somebody says, are you skeptical about vaccines? And he says like, oh, well, I just want to follow the science. And then that's it. And nobody pushes him farther on that. Then I think for most people, that sounds like a fine answer. Okay, you'll follow the science. That's what it sounds like. I didn't hear any like crazy own moments. Like in Hegseth, I think there was some where it was like, Jesus Christ, bro. For the confirmation hearing, yeah, for RFK, I just didn't hear any moments where it was like, oof, that was like super rough. Oh my God, he got trashed there. I just didn't really hear much of that or any of that. So that's what I want to say. I feel like he did decently, but. So they trolled Harris and she never had a chance of getting on Rogan? Probably not. They probably were never going to have her on. Would be my guess, but. Wait, what is this quote? What?
When you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. Rob Crilly.
I don't even know. I feel like conservatives pray for the latter. Yeah. Wait, Kash Patel? Why does that sound like a game show host? Am I just thinking of Raj Patel?